Our reporter Criselda Lewis is in Harare, Zimbabwe for the MDC Alliance rally. We're live there now. Criselda. All right, live visuals out of Harare, Zimbabwe, where crowds have amassed for the MDC Alliance political rally. Of course, this is the last day of electioneering before the crucial Zimbabwe polls set for Monday.
Pictures are from Freedom Square here in Harare, in the city, where thousands of MDC Alliance faithful members, supporters have come to listen to the party leader Nelson Chamisa, who has just concluded his address just 2 days now, Peter Ndoro, from Zimbabwe's election. Well, millions of Zimbabweans go to the polls on Monday to vote for a president, and many of these people who have gathered here this afternoon have been reiterating, Peter, that they want change. We saw the numbers at the ZANU-PF rally. Now, the final rally of the MDC Alliance. It's a sea of red, Peter.
It is quite a remarkable scene to see. This is in the center of Harare. This is traditionally an MDC stronghold, but they certainly came out in their numbers today. And the message from the MDC Alliance leader was that the Mugabes of this world made their contribution, they did their work, but this is a modern time, a modern era, and a time for change, and even hinted that it's a time for the young. And as you can hear in the background now, they're all shouting, "We want change." It's very difficult to estimate the numbers here, but it's clearly in the tens of thousands, the sea of red supporters that will be marching to the polls on Monday. And Nelson Chamisa says that if we miss this opportunity, we are going to be doomed. So he's mobilizing his army to go out and vote on Monday, and they certainly came out in their numbers today, Criselda.
Peter, was certainly a battle of trying to pull out the supporters, a basic show of force. And we were at the earlier rally with the ZANU-PF, looking at the numbers here. If we look back to a couple of years ago, could one perhaps say that the calls for change in Zimbabwe have grown?
There's no doubt that, it's very difficult to compare what's happening in Harare, because we know that Harare is an MDC stronghold. So if we compare rallies to rallies, we have to take that into consideration. But it is clear that in the urban areas...
Sorry, Peter, can I just catch you there for a second? Let's just listen in on what the crowds are saying.
We want change! 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 We want change!
Well, Peter, I'm really sorry to cut you off there, but I think in just those few words, these MDC Alliance supporters, faithful and members have only but a few words that could change, perhaps, post Monday's election, the course of this country. Of course, that's what they say.
You know what's interesting to me, as I scan the crowd, I'm seeing a fairly young crowd of people. And I'm comparing that to what I saw at the ZANU-PF rally at National Sports Stadium. And a lot of the people, they were a little bit older. So I wonder if that speaks to who Nelson Chamisa appeals to, who Nelson Chamisa's followers are by and large. Most of the people that we can see here are young people. And it may be just the ones that came to the rally. Clearly, he's got support across the board. But at 40 years old, these are the people that more easily relate to him. Most of the people that you see here have never known anybody except President Robert Mugabe and more recently President Mnangagwa as their head of state. So for them, it's going to be a major departure from what they've known.
Peter, does it look like perhaps the future for Zimbabwe is young? Because clearly the messages that have been put out by Nelson Chamisa during his campaigns, and judging by the demographic that has gathered here today. It certainly is young. Is it perhaps that maybe Chamisa's messages resonate very well with young people? After all, they are the ones who are bearing the brunt of joblessness, poverty, and an education system which perhaps some of them might say does not have a future if something in Zimbabwe does not change.
There's no question that the country is a young population. If you look at the continent-wide average, it's 19 and a half. Zimbabwe is not going to be too far away from that. So the majority of voters this year are going to be much younger. They're going to be ones that don't remember the struggle. Most of them might not have been even there in 1980 to see Robert Mugabe at his height. So yes, if they show up to the polls, because young people, they're very enthusiastic, but on the day sometimes they don't show up. If they show up in their numbers, they could influence the result.
Peter, I think just to remind our viewers, they might be wondering what's going on here behind us, but we're standing on top of the SABC's outside broadcast van just to try and get a vantage point of the crowds that we are seeing here. Peter, I'm going to allow you to continue. I'm going to get off the truck and see if I can speak to some of the young people who have been gathered here. You continue. I'll catch you in a few moments.
All right, so once again, these remarkable scenes you're seeing here in Harare, downtown at Freedom Square, are images of the MDC supporters who've just started to leave the rally, the final rally, and this is what they're saying. Well, the message is clear. Change is what they want. They want a new Zimbabwe, a new country, and a new way of doing things. When Nelson Chamisa started his speech, he spoke about the same WhatsApp group that President Mnangagwa belongs to with former President Mugabe. And so that there is a requirement that there's a new order and a new guard to take care of Zimbabwe. And he also said that the soldiers and the police belong to the people and they don't belong to a particular party. But these faithful, he called them to order and said, listen, you have to show up on Monday. You have to show up in your numbers. If we miss this opportunity, we may be at a great loss. He used the word doomed. The faithful of the MDC Alliance certainly came out in their tens of thousands here in Harare. But this, again, as we were saying, is their natural stronghold. ZANU-PF perhaps has performed much better in the rural areas over the years, and they probably will continue to look to that part of the world, part of the country, for the majority of their votes. Let's go to Griselda.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I've moved now from the top of the outside broadcast van right here to where the crowds have been shouting, "We want change," shouting the name Chamisa. Well, this is certainly the final push for the two big political parties, ZANU-PF as well as the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance. I am surrounded by thousands of them at this stage. They're pushing just quite a bit. Let me see if I can speak to just a few of them at this time. So let me talk to you. Why are you here today?
I'm happy because today I want to see a new Zimbabwe with a new leader, a 40-year-old. The same age as I am. I want to see a new Zimbabwe, not that old Zimbabwe.
All right. Well, everyone's trying to speak at the same time here, but it's quite clear that many of them are saying that they want change, they want better opportunities, and I think some of the key sticking points at this stage are our education, better jobs, better infrastructure, better roads. Let me try again and see if I can speak to just one of them. All right, sir, stand here. Just hold on. Sir, tell us, what are you looking forward to?
We just want change in Zimbabwe because we are tired for this fucking government.
All right, we do apologize for that. Let's throw back to Peter right now as everyone is trying to get their voices heard here. Peter.
SABC News, of course, live visuals out of downtown Harare, Freedom Square, where the MDC Alliance is holding its huge rally today. Thousands of supporters gathered in Freedom Square, a sea of red this afternoon. This, of course, the final rally, the final round of electioneering, the last 24 hours before these crucial polls, and millions of Zimbabweans make their mark come Monday. Our reporter, Crisalda Lewis, there a few minutes ago, swamped by MDC Alliance supporters.
Saying that under his administration, if he wins elections, they are going to be part of the broader society.
Our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, joining us from Harare at this point.
That is not partisan. It will be non-partisan. He spoke to the army, having nice words for the army, saying that whatever happens, whoever wins, the army must salute whoever is going to be a commander-in-chief. But he sounds very, very, very confident.
And this, as a young man, age 40, he's had some big shoes to fill. With the passing of Morgan Tsvangirai, he had to step into the breach very quickly and convince people that he was up to the game and be able to take over the most important office in the land. And I wonder if this show today is perhaps testimony that perhaps his message is reaching its intended targets.
When you look at the constituency or perhaps the group, these are young people. You have a sprinkle of senior citizens, but it looks like he has been able to attract young people. The question is, how do you ensure that these young people, this middle-age group, they go to the polls in numbers? Because you can fill the stadium, you can fill the pitch. If they don't go and vote, it is going to be a lost battle. But indeed, after the passing on of Morgan Tsvangirai, it was a tall order for him to take the reins and to ensure that he is ready to run a campaign. It was shaky when he started, but finally he was able to pull up the numbers, and also his campaign did finally work for him. And you know that you have Dr. Thokozani Kupe in Bulawayo, who had a rally also today. But it looks like Chamisa, as a new leader for this group, he is still in command in terms of the party. And I saw General Dabengwa sitting there, listening attentively. You know very well, from ZAPU, he has joined the alliance. And it looks like he's managing to win some votes and perhaps win some of the high-profile leaders. I saw Tendai Biti there on the podium. I even saw the leader of the new party, the party that many were saying that's the making of former President Robert Mugabe. That party is there. He also spoke about President Robert Mugabe, saying that he's a senior citizen, he's a former president, and they must just respect him as a former leader.
One of the things that he's been able to do as well and do well is in many ways invoke the spirit and the name and the fatherliness of Morgan Tsvangirai. He said that just before he passed, like Joshua in the Bible, he said, take my people to the promised land. And this is what he's saying. So in many ways, he's allowing the shadow of Morgan Tsvangirai to cast over this crowd and to win them and push them across the finish line.
He's a founding father of the MDC. You can't have MDC or you go to a rally, you don't talk about the founding father. Back home, you know very well, the ruling party, they always evoke the spirits of former President Nelson Mandela. MDC, the founding father is Morgan Changarai. You can't address these thousands and not kind of referring to him. Indeed, he started the party at a very difficult time. But unfortunately, after the coup or perhaps the changes, things got better. But unfortunately, he couldn't live to see this election.
So we're now counting down. The last rallies have happened, both the ZANU-PF and the MDC Alliance, which are seen as the front runners. And people will have time to reflect tomorrow. There are still a number of undecided voters. I wonder if people have heard enough today to swing them one way or the other.
Well, I think both the leaders, the front runners, I'm talking about Emmerson Mnangagwa and Nelson Chamisa, they did their best. And I think for me now, it ends here. Now it's up to the voters. Tomorrow, there's no campaigning. It's done, it's done, it's done.
And we will be bringing you those pictures live as much as we can. But let's try again. On the ground, in the middle of the supporters. Griselda?
From where I'm standing at the moment, a bit more orderly now where I am. They managed to push back some of the crowds who all want an opportunity to speak. And as Sophie Mukwena indicated, it's basically done. The big rallies now have been held. By now, those perhaps who have not decided on who they will vote for come Monday's election, perhaps might have made up their minds now. Let's talk to one of these supporters, members of the MDC direction. You're here today, obviously, to come and make your voice heard. And what exactly is that?
We are here for Chamisa. We want jobs. We have suffered as a nation for a long time.
Better healthy facilities in Zimbabwe. We want change. So we are saying Chamisa, Chamisa, Chamisa. He is our president, free and fair. And ZEC should hold a credible election. ZEC is not a part of ZANU-PF. It is a board of Zimbabwe and it should play its role. We want...
Ma'am, let's talk to you. What challenges have you been experiencing and what do you want to see after Monday's election?
We want change. No rigging.
Yes, we want free and fair election in Zimbabwe. We are tired, we are toiling each and every day. We are suffering like dogs in this country because of this government, ZANU-PF. So we want change. We want change. Exactly, they have to change their mind. They have to know that we are suffering. We don't want a scenario whereby one is eating out of 10,000 people.
All right, thank you very much. Just some of the voices that we're hearing. Back to you, Peter.
Live visuals. You're watching live visuals out of downtown Harare this hour, Freedom Square, where MDC Alliance supporters are gathered for that final rally. They're already dispersing at this point. Griselda Lewis, our reporter on the ground, trying to garner some comment from MDC supporters there. Peter Ndoro.
Live from Harare. We'll catch you later.